Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming to this meeting of the Formal Demography Working Group. Um, I'm Monica. I'm one of the organisers. Vanessa DeLago is here as well. She's the person with a very cute baby on that's sitting on her lap. So I just wanted to thank you all for coming and shout out if you'd like to be involved in terms of giving a talk. Please let us know, or we can organise something. So today we're excited to have Philippe Bocquier speaking with us today. Philippe is a professor in the Demography Research Centre at UC Leuven in Belgium, and he's also an honorary senior researcher at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. Philippe has very far-reaching interests across many domains of demography. I think he's most well known for his work on urbanization, urban transition theory, and work relating urbanization and health and other sort of migration aspects in health as well. Philippe has done a lot of work in sub-Saharan African countries, spending many decades as a researcher in many different countries in that region, and has a lot of really cool experience working with all sorts of different data. So today, Philippe's going to talk about a different aspect of his work, a project looking at historical Belgium, and in particular, looking at identifying small area diffusion of mortality transitions. Thanks, Philippe.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. I'm not sure that the presentation qualifies for formal demography, but there is enough modeling to discuss about. So yes, indeed, it's an area of my work that is more historical demography and focusing on this. On Belgium data and trying to identify a possible diffusion of the mortality transition or the mortality decline in the 19th century. So to give you a picture of overall level of mortality and where the mortality started to decline on when more exactly. And so we have this trend and you can see, let me activate the laser pointer. You can see that around this period, the mortality was more or less stable and varying quite a lot. And then it started to decline consistently. And apart from of course, the First World War, it became more or less flat here with slightly declining trend after 1965. But we are interested in that particular period, ranging from 1841 to 1915, where we can see a decline. Let me try to move. Yes. Actually, compared to some other countries in Europe, the mortality started to decline for good rather late as compared to neighboring countries. And it roughly declined from the level of 25 per thousand to around 15 per thousand in about 50 years. During that period, it happens that we also have aggregated data at municipal level, which is a fairly detailed level, as you can see here from those two maps. In 1846 and 1910, you see quite a decline in mortality. Of course, the the redder the higher the mortality, and the lighter colors the lower the mortality. Um, and I could have, I mean, the maps below here show a 3 year average, but which is more readable in terms of seeing the overall pattern. But the reason why I show you those maps is also to show you that there are many municipalities with no data. I don't know if you can see it on the picture from your side, but there are a lot of municipalities with just in white because there was no available data. And so that's also something that we must consider when we look at the trends. But overall, more than 26,000 municipalities are documented, even if there are missing data for some of them or for some years. Okay. So the objectives of our study was to analyze fine-grained spatial differences. At the end of the day, we'll end up with about 2,300 municipalities out of the 2,600 for which we had some data. And focusing on this period of 1841 to 1915, and to identify the year of transition, the year at which there was a good mortality decline, a persistent mortality decline, and also to analyze the reasons for this decline, identify the determinants of this decline, and in particular, a possible diffusion effect at the spatial level. So we have raw mortality data, like crude death rates only. We don't have, except for some years and not for all municipalities, death rates by sex and age. So we must deal with crude death rates. And but we have that data for those data for quite a number of municipalities. And as I said, there were some missing years, and also the total population was not necessarily available for mid-year or for systematically for 1st January. So we had to deal also with that, but I will skip those details. So the first step was to smooth CDR trends. So I like this cartoon on the right that shows all the funny explanations that funny justification that we give to our fitting this or that way our data. But I felt a bit attacked by this cartoon when it comes to depiction of this particular case, which is a piecewise regression, and actually it resembles a lot what we did. Okay, so I will try to justify it more than what is in the cartoon. So these we have small populations. So as I said, municipality level. Municipalities in Belgium at the time, it's a reminder that it was very small as compared to municipalities, say, in France or in UK or elsewhere. So it's quite exceptional to have data at this level. But of course, there's a lot of random variations. And also there were missing years and years of epidemics. We resorted to the so-called single exponential smoothing. Um, and um, and here, I mean, this kind of smoothing is um, appropriate when there is no linear or higher order trends over the whole observation period, and actually why we expect no linear, I mean, we expect some linear trend, but not for the whole period. So we expect actually a change in mortality trend at some point, okay? And also, it's appropriate for data with low velocity and aperiodic variation in the mean. So what it means here is that we expect sudden variations, like epidemics, but quick return to the mean. So it's actually the same as ARIMA model with no time lag, 1 year difference and 1 year moving average for those who know a bit about ARIMA model. So here are the equations. So that's the main, I mean, the year-to-year equation is that one. And in terms of initial values, it's this, it can be written that way. So the constraint here is that we have to use for initial values or starting values. In our case, we use 10 years. We were lucky that actually for the municipalities for which we have data, actually the first 10 years were most of the time available. And that is from the estimate of the CDR from 1841 to 1850. Okay, so that's quite convenient. And then we can yes account for missing years by actually how to say, interpolating or the data. So that's quite, I mean, this model is quite useful to interpolate the data when there are some years that are missing. So the merit is that we have at our disposal the initial values of, I mean, the initial CDRs for 10 years. Very few municipalities were actually discarded because these data were not available. We can accommodate missing years. So we calibrated the model so that a maximum of 10-year forecast was possible, but actually in our data, there were no such cases with more than 10 years gap. This model enables us to focus on the trend and to smooth out the effect of epidemics. So the idea really is to identify the overall trend and not so much the variations. I'll come to the impact of the variations later. The limit is that there's a tendency, and I'll show you a graph now, to distribute the deaths in the years following epidemics. So, for example, we have the result of the smoothing here for Antwerp. So the initial values are in blue. I don't know if you can see it from your side. So you can see some variations, for example, in I forgot, 1866 and also 1849, you had epidemics. Uh, but you can see from the smoothing that the smoothing allows to, I mean, reduce the effect of these peaks. Okay. But overall, the trend is there, and even if there are missing values, we are. It seems that the trend is well depicted. Okay, you have also. Sorry, I'm trying to move my mouse. Here is a graph for Brussels, and you can also see some years that are where there were epidemics. I think it's also 1866 for Brussels. That is clearly a year of high CDR. So once we have those smooth trends, we can start to work on the modeling the mortality decline. And so we made some assumptions. So we made the assumption that some transition occurred that triggered a decline in the mortality trend. Transition here means a year of mortality decline. We assume that the levels and trends before and after transition year are specific to each municipality. So we want to not to model the Belgian transition, but more the municipality transition. So the smooth trends that we identify before represent well the underlying latent trend in mortality, despite the variations, the local variations or the year-to-year variations. And the trends are assumed to be linear before and after the transition, okay? And the trend also after transition is downward and steeper compared to trend before transition. Also, we assume that estimations of the transition year are not affected by missing data or by peaks. How do we implement this identification of the transition year? We use a nonlinear model, which can be actually, like in the cartoon I've shown you before, called a piecewise linear model, because actually it's a linear model. We split the data in two, and assuming that it's linear before and after the transition year. And so it takes this form where T is a number of years since 1841, and I is the index for municipality. But, oh, sorry, yes, it's omitted here for simplicity, but it should be here in the full equation. Alpha is a constant, and we have random effects to capture unobserved effects at municipality level, where we have intercept and slope, and the year of the node. The node is the transition year, and we assume that the slope after the node is actually negative. Okay, so we impose this downward trend. So it's a strong assumption that we make, but based on, of course, the general trend that we observe at Belgium level. And of course, there is an error term. So how does it translate into the data? Here is an example of Antwerp that I've shown you before. So you still have the blue points here are the actually crude death rate. The red curve is the smooth CDR from the previous model. And then you clearly see here a trend in yellow that shows the trend before the transition, okay? And you can uh, extrapolate this trend after the transition to see what would be the trend if there was no transition. So it's a counterfactual, so that's why I put it counterfactual. But although it's counterfactual just after the transition, not before, because before it's based on the actual trend. And after the trend, the transition year, which is here 1876, according to the model, you have the downward trend. So the mortality trend after 76 in green. Okay, so that's the what happens for Antwerp, and you can do the same for. I mean, we did the same for all municipalities. So you have Brussels here, but you also have two examples for which the model is not so nice. For example, you have Tielt here on the bottom left, where we sort of identify a trend in, a transition year in 42, but it's not very convincing. Actually, it looks like the mortality was already declining from the beginning, and so it's not really a transition year, okay? We also have the case of a late transition here in 1890, where we see also very strong random variations in this municipality, which is a small municipality. You see that from the blue points, they are scattered all around. And so it's not so easy to see, to be completely convinced that there was indeed a transition at the time. So there are some limitations, of course, but overall, especially for the municipalities with big enough population, we have something that looks quite reasonable. So here is an example of the 10 most, the biggest cities in Belgium at the time. And you can see that the trend before the transition year were not always flat but they could be either upward or downward or flat. But after the transition year, which happens at different time depending on the municipality, you had a downward trend, and more or less we can perceive a kind of a convergence of the mortality levels. So here from that we can play a little movie, if I can try. Not sure I can run that. It seems that I thought I could click on it, but it seems it doesn't work. Ah, yes, it works. If I click probably here. I don't know what's happening. Ah, yes. So here is the municipality is starting to transit to make a transition, and you can see how gradually all municipalities are making that transition. Translated into another map, here the darker, the later the transition, the lighter, the sooner the transition. For some municipalities, we couldn't identify an actual decline, and most of the time it was because the level of mortality was already pretty low. There was the issue of the impact of the epidemic years. So there were excess mortality, in particular in the late 1840s, and it's what we call the potato crisis. That is, there was a crisis related to the a disease of the potato, and it led to famine and epidemics, especially in 47, 48. And we were worried that it would create an artificial transition, despite using smooth CDR. But actually, eliminating those years with excess mortality, that is 5 standard deviation above the mean, didn't actually eliminate suspicious transition years. So actually the results I've shown you are the results without those years, and it didn't really change our estimate. So it's pretty robust to these exceptions. So reminder of the modeling step. We had the first step, single exponential smoothing, a second step which was nonlinear modeling, and now we have a third step, which is the Cox model, to identify the determinants of the duration until mortality transition, until the year of the mortality decline, and possibly identifying diffusion effects. So the Cox model is pretty standard. It includes a number of variables, so variables that are fixed characteristics at the beginning of the, that are valid over the 75 years of exposure, potential exposure. You have also variables that are period varying characteristics, that is years, characteristics of the municipalities around the year of the census, and also yearly characteristics, year varying characteristics. So characteristics that vary every year, possibly with a time lag. And the betas, of course, are coefficients associated with all these, the 3 categories of variables, and plus an error term. And this is done on unweighted data. So each municipality has the same weight. So the event of interest is the year of mortality decline, which can happen any year between 42 and 1902. We don't have any identified year of mortality decline after 1902. Mind you, this is not a model about the level of mortality decline, but the speed. It's a model. It's modeling the speed of the occurrence of the transition. Okay, so it's really the Cox model is about the event of the mortality decline, and we wanted to also identify the possible diffusion. And how we did that was to see whether there was a mortality decline in neighboring municipalities the year before. Okay, so it's a lagged variable. So it's a population-weighted percentage of transition around the municipality at stake. And so we have a set of endogenous and exogenous control variables. All are time varying except the initial level of CDR. So initial CDR is means here the level in 4150. We have population growth with 1 year lag, interacted with large periods around the census. Age structure, because we were worried that our estimate would be dependent on the age structure, because CDR by definition doesn't control for age structure. So we estimated the profile of age into 8 clusters. We also use population density and then exogenous variables, like it's a combination of employment structure, that is whether most people work in agriculture, industry, other sectors. The wealth, that is through the cadastral income, and native structure. What we mean by that is the number of people who were born in the municipalities versus outside the municipalities, but within the same province or in another province, or foreigners. And then also we have access to drinkable water and percentage literate, interacted with large periods, because we were assuming that being literate in the, say, 1840s was not the same as being literate at the turn of the century. And also percentage of French speakers, and also of multilingual speakers, also interacted with large periods. So about the age structure, I will go fast, but those graphs are showing that it's fairly heterogeneous. Okay, the population structure is quite heterogeneous across municipalities. So that's why we're a bit worried about that. So we control for that. The mortality in neighboring, decline in neighboring municipalities, what we see here is that each municipality has a maximum of, a minimum, sorry, of 1 neighbor or 17 neighbors. But 48% had around 5 to 6 neighbors, and 77% 4 to 7 neighbors. And what we can see from this graph is that, which is the percentage of the population around the municipalities or in neighboring municipalities that made a transition. We can see that most neighboring municipalities had made a transition but the transition years of neighboring municipalities are mainly between the 1850s to the 1870s. So in terms of the Cox model, we have first hazard rates, and you can see that in those hazard rates that there were a number of municipalities making the transition quite early, but the hazards are really rising in the 60s and 70s. And after that, they are reach a very high level, and then after most of municipalities anyway had already made their transition. So in terms of Kaplan-Meier estimate, you can see that here, that reaching 1900, or almost all municipalities had their transition made. In terms of the Cox model, here are the what I call the endogenous demographic variables. So Initial level of CDR is very strong effect, very significant, and means that actually the higher the initial level, the faster is the transition, okay? Then the age structure, surprisingly, has very, very little effect, okay? With very large intervals. So a lot of heterogeneity, and we cannot conclude on this. Population density has, but it's rather counterintuitive, but it's actually the smaller municipality, I mean the smaller, where the population density is the lower, that actually the population, the transition is the faster. So it's easier to make the transition when the density is low. And here is a depiction of the diffusion effect, and it's very strong and consistent. And whether we include or exclude some of the other covariates, we still have this very strong diffusion effect, and in the same magnitude. Here is the effect of population growth. And basically what it says is when there is a crisis, that is when the population growth is lower than average or even negative, then the transition will be faster. Okay, so it seems that there was often a transition triggered by a crisis, a demographic crisis, and that's quite strong. Regarding the exogenous variables, there is very little that is conclusive here, and the only kind of conclusive is the percentage of French speaking. It seems to be conducive to faster transition. So it might actually be also an argument for the idea of diffusion, because it might be that the diffusion also came from France in a way and spread over Belgium, mainly through French-speaking municipalities. The socioeconomic clusters have no noticeable or convincing effects. Yeah. So to sum up, the determinants of mortality transition depends. I mean, the mortality transition depends a lot on the initial CDR. There is a high diffusion effect. Lower density municipalities have earlier transition, but negligible effect of age structure, no convincing effect of socio-economic composition, and including literacy and even openness, cultural openness through multilingual population, but some positive effect of speaking French, probably because of a diffusion from France. So in terms of substantive conclusion, we could say that endogenous variables are the strongest. When I say endogenous, all that is related to the population itself, okay, to the demographic dynamics. And a possible explanation is that there were responses to crisis, and that could have spurred demographic stress and enabled horizontal transmission of ideas and practices and behaviors. That's a possible explanation, and also that the diffusion was possible through geographically localized networks. But we must admit here that we lack a truly convincing explanation as to the mechanisms of this diffusion. Um, and very little support for standard modernization theories that rely on exogenous variables like literacy, employment, whatever. So, yeah. Methodological conclusion, small area estimation seems to work pretty well. Um, uh, for the identification of the inception of the transition, so the decline in mortality, it also seems to work pretty well, and as well as the Cox model for the identifying the determinants of the transition. Even if we are a bit frustrated that we cannot really, despite our efforts, identify the diffusion mechanism. Okay. But obvious limit is that, as you can see, is a succession of models. So it's really modeling on, I mean, model on model on model. So it's a, of course, it's an obvious limitation, and there are some caveats here and there that can sort of multiply, and it's very difficult then to control for possible transmission of biases from one model to the next. So thanks for your kind attention, and I'm ready for questions if we still have some time.
Thanks very much, Philippe. That was really interesting. Um, we have, and a couple of good little comics as well. We have plenty of time for questions. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. Um, so we have a question in the chat from Philippe Sanchez. Wondering if you considered any methodology to determine the node. Is that Does that refer to?
Yeah, I don't
Sorry.
know.
Yeah, hi.
Hello. Yeah, no, I was wondering if you have any methodology to determine how is the change or the point of change, or you just at this point, maybe I misunderstood the point.
Well, the second model is really what identifies the node. So it's what we call the nonlinear model, or the piecewise model, which is breaking, in a way, the trend in two parts. Okay, so that's the idea. That there is no one trend for the whole period, and we assume that there should be a break in the trend, and the point of break is what we call the node, so the transition year, the year of continuous mortality decline.
Thank you.
Tom?
Yes, this is Tom Pullum. I really enjoyed this. Very good work and presentation. But I have three questions, if you don't mind. The first one is, did you try this model on the unsmoothed data? Because the smoothing process introduces some blurring, I believe, I would think, of the transition year. The second question would be, how do you interpret the slope in the pre-transition line? Sometimes the pre-transition line is sloping upwards, sometimes it's sloping downwards. It's not necessarily flat. And I wonder how you interpret that. Then my third question regarding the diffusion is, do you have access to any data on marriages and the place of residence of the man and the woman? Because it seems likely that these were not just um, that during this period of time, the marriages were not solely within the um, municipality, and this could give an indication of how much social interaction, say, there was between nearby municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those quite relevant questions. So why not modeling on non-smooth or unsmoothed data? One problem is that we are facing here the small area estimation problem. That is, we have data that are at municipal level. So of course, the 10 cities that I've for which I've shown trends are pretty reliable, and they are not so much variations except some epidemic years. But for some municipalities, it's really very, it looks like very random variation. So we wanted to avoid that issue by smoothing out those variations and to retain to filter in a way to obtain an overall trend. So it's obviously at a cost, okay? So we assume that the smooth trends are capturing a true or latent trend, and that's only because the next model, which is identifying the transition year, will not work on data that are not previously smoothed, you know. So it will not be able to pick up a particular year for a break in the trend. So that's why we used a smooth trend. So it's obviously at a cost, but it seems to be more reasonable than working on the crude CDR. Now, the slope in the pre-transition period, well, it's been documented quite well that in the first half of the 19th century, when industrial, which is the start of the industrial era. Remember that Belgium was the second country after UK to industrialize at a high scale and rate. There was actually a lot of situations where the actual CDR was, mortality in general was rising, okay, because of the working conditions or the living conditions, and also because of related epidemics, that is cholera, and also in relation to the potato crisis and so on and so forth. So we can actually see more stable trends paradoxically in the more rural areas, and actually even lower levels of mortality in the rural areas as compared to the high density urban areas. Yeah, But obviously, I mean, those trends are varying quite a lot depending on the situation, on the diffusion. Actually, I don't think we can have at this level of, I mean, at this geographical level for all municipalities, we won't have much data on marriage. It's possible to do, and I have colleagues who do case studies on specific municipalities and digging into the data on marriage, etc. So they can get more precise data on marriage, etc. But regarding the place of residence, indeed, there are marriages across municipalities, but the best we can estimate or assess the movements, the migration, is through the percentage native. Okay, so we control for that, and actually it had no noticeable or consistent effect. So we controlled for that with a variable combining several socio-economic characteristics, and nothing clear came from that. And also we control for multilingualism, which is indirectly measuring mobility or migration, and it didn't really come up.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mark?
Hi, thanks, Philippe. That was very interesting. I have a couple of probably quick questions about the technical side. When you were modeling the diffusion process, I wonder, did you include a control for the total number of municipalities that had transitioned as well as just the neighbors? It just occurred to me, looking at your table, it is like a higher proportion of the neighbors over time, and it seems inevitable that all of them would eventually transition, I guess. So to kind of test the network effect, I wondered if you had a variable in there that was simply reflecting the total number that had transitioned, and to sort of check that it wasn't just that was had a big impact. The other thing occurred to me, and I did look away when you were giving some of the detailed modeling slides, so you may have covered it, but you mentioned one of the municipalities was very small and the data were quite noisy and it was difficult to detect the change points. That seems like a job for a hierarchical model. So I wonder if you thought about including that structure in the modeling.
Sorry, I didn't understand the last question.
Well, you have all these. Yeah, you have all these municipalities. Some of them are very small. The data is noisy or not. There isn't much of it or something. I mean, I wondered if you thought about just putting it in some sort of hierarchical structure that might help improve estimates of those smaller municipalities.
Okay. Okay. Regarding the first, no, we do not control actually for the number of existing transition, because we control for neighbors. I mean, only, not for the whole country. If I'm understanding your question, so it's we assume that the transition in one municipality will depend essentially on surrounding municipalities. So of course I mean, there might be other ways to measure diffusion, but we thought that it would be the most accurate, assuming that information and behaviors and would circulate better among neighboring municipalities. At the time, I mean, I remember in the 19th century, there was no internet or whatever, so people relied a lot on visiting neighbors and visiting. I mean, travels were a fairly short distance, and going to the marketplace or working in neighboring municipalities would be the way we assume that knowledge was spread. Okay. Now, the hierarchical structure, it's a good idea. I'm wondering how we could do that, because here, indeed, we assume that once it's the CDRs are smoothed, we assume that each municipality has the same value, value in terms of quality, the same quality. But obviously, it's not true. So we could indeed account for some level of reliability in the smooth trend. That's a good idea. So yeah, yeah. There are probably ways of dealing with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. We've got a couple more questions, so we'll just quickly. So firstly, Ronak in the chat asks about sort of municipalities. So in terms of what's the relative size compared to other countries, and are they the same for rural and urban areas? And then also, did you have problems with changing boundaries over time? And if so, how did you deal with that? And then how you can ask your question after that.
Okay. So in the municipalities were fairly small. I mean, on average, I forgot, I had some figures. I think it was something around 2,000. No, 1,000 on average, 1,000 inhabitants on average. And it can, some municipalities were more than 10,000. Okay, so for example, the 10 cities that I've highlighted at some point, they are all more than 10,000. But most, as I said, the average or the median value is around 1,000. Okay, so they are fairly small. And what was the other question about municipalities? I forgot. Whether they were stable over time. Yes, that's one advantage of Belgium, is that those municipalities didn't change boundary for decades. So the few that change boundaries are not included in the analysis. Okay. So that's why we don't have actually 2,600 municipalities over time. It's because there's some that change boundaries, and it was complicated to come up with consistent estimates. So we just dropped those because there were not so many anyway. Okay. So that's a big difference with the situation in UK, for example, where they keep changing boundaries decades after decades. So it was complicated. It is complicated for our friends in UK to do the same, and they use much larger administrative areas than us. Okay, for that reason.
Thanks. That's very lucky that you have
boundaries. Very lucky.
One last question from Hal.
Thanks for a really interesting talk. It must be slightly frustrating to hear endless suggestions for other things to put into what was already what I thought was an amazingly thorough data analysis. My contribution to that pile, which you don't really have to comment on, is in some areas of spatial population modeling, you might consider diffusion not just to immediate neighbors, but also the second neighbors. So
Mhm.
that's the map you showed at the beginning. It's a very, very, very fine-grained set of areas that you have. And so if you had you have your municipality and it's got its immediate neighbors and then their neighbors, which are farther away and less connected, but still possibly contributing something to the diffusion effect.
Mhm.
I don't
Thank you
think it would. I don't think it would change anything, but it's a you have an unusual ability to do it with that data that you're working with.
Yeah, well, we could actually we thought of improving a bit the analysis of diffusion through data on the connection between municipalities through roads, but most of all through trains, because Belgium actually developed a network of a railway network, which was quite amazing in the 19th century. So it came to a point that at some point in time, I can't remember exactly when, but almost all municipalities were connected to another through train, okay, railway. So it was quite, and the purpose was to bring workers to factories, and so there was a vested interest in from the industries to develop train, and then after its decline, because the priority was given to the roads and the cars, or the public road transport. So we maybe our next step will, I mean, if we succeed in building that a database which will be time varying database, because trains developed a lot along the 19th century, then we might be able to measure better the connection between municipalities than just because of being neighbors. Okay, so we'll try that, but actually, our current analysis, what I presented today, is an encouragement to look more in details at this diffusion. Although we cannot really pinpoint the mechanism. What is diffused, okay, is not really known. Is it knowledge? We tried with doctors, for example, the number of doctors, etc. It didn't work. And because actually the number of doctors developed, but at the end of the 19th century, not at the moment, not at the time of the identified transitions. So it didn't really, it's not really satisfying. Yeah. But thank you for the questions and the compliments.
Okay, given it's after 11, we better end there. Thank you everyone for a great discussion. Thank you, Philippe, for a really awesome presentation and super interesting results and really cool data set. See you all next time at the next meeting.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation.
No worries. See you guys.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.